I'll show how to create a radial chart in Tableau with a creative twist by adding custom shapes and labels to the end of each line. And I already have several videos posted on other enhancements you can make to radial charts. The first step to creating a radial chart is on the Data Source tab. We need to union the data so the table stacks on top of itself. This gives us the duplicated rows we need to create the smooth curves in a radial chart. And we'll use this table name field generated from the union to distinguish between the tables. And for this example, I'm going to use sales by channel for the radial chart. So I'll start by creating a calculated field to get the percentage of sales for each channel using an LOD. So I'll hold fixed the channel field because we want the total number of orders for each channel. And I'll take the count distinct of the order IDs. Then I'll divide this by holding fixed nothing, the count distinct of order IDs, which is just the total number of orders. That way we get the percent of orders for each channel with this calculation. Next, I'll use a calculated field to create the points. And I'll type if the table name contains 1, then 0. Otherwise, our radial LOD. So this points formula controls the length of the line. And I'm multiplying it by 360 so the percent is scaled to a circle. This is how we get rings that match the actual percentage, but I'll show how we can adjust this later. I'll right-click on this points field so I can create some bins, and I'll set the size to 1. These points break the line into smaller steps, so Tableau can draw a smooth curve. Before we set up the X and Y axes, we need to rank the channels so the largest percentage shows as the outer ring. This formula takes the LOD for each channel and ranks it. Then it flips the order so the highest percent gets a rank of 1. Now for the X-axis. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this formula in here, but I have all these formulas in the description. Then I'll duplicate the X-axis so I can edit it for the Y-axis. And all I need to change here is the sign to a cosine. Now I can pull X into the columns and Y into the rows. I'll right-click on the X-axis so I can compute this using the bins. And I'll do the same thing for Y. So you can see how we're starting to get a curve here, but there's no distinction by channel. I'll pull channel into the marks and then right-click on the X-axis so I can edit the table calculation. I want radial X pointed at the bins, but for the radial rank, I want to change this to the channel. And I'll repeat that same process for the Y-axis. This is because X and Y depend on the bins to plot the shape, while rank depends on the channel to place each ring. To get those rings, I'll change the mark type to a line, and I'll make the point spin determine the path of the line. And these look a little bit distorted right now, so I just need to edit the axes so that they match. Fixing these axes to the same range makes the scaling equal, so the rings line up evenly as parts of a circle. And since each of these rings represents a channel, I'll change channel in the marks to determine the color of each ring. Then I can use the size slider in the marks to make the rings bigger. Now that we have a basic radial chart with ring size to the portion of orders for each channel, I'll show how to add end labels. And you can customize these to display any metric or detail that you want. When I first sketched this out, I thought it was going to be tricky, but it was actually more simple than I expected because we just need to reuse the X-axis formula with a small tweak in the logic. So for the label formula at the beginning, I'm going to type if the index equals the window max of the index, then our X-axis formula. And since index just numbers all the points in the ring, by telling Tableau to only keep the highest index, we're keeping just the last point. And that's what's going to give us the endpoint for the label. So now I just need to bring this label field into the columns. I'll make this compute using the bins, and then edit the table calculation so rank is computing using the channel. Then I'll make these a dual axis. And once I sync the axes, you can see the label points appear at the end of each line. I'll change the mark type for the label to a shape. And I'll pick a long rounded container that I loaded in. But if you wanted to show more metrics or use a different style, you can load your own shape or just use one of Tableau's. To add the metrics, I'll start by moving the LOD into the marks since it's the percent of orders by channel. And I'll make this a label. Then using label in the marks, I'm going to center this horizontally and vertically. That way it ends up inside our shape. I can also format this LOD so it's a percentage with no decimals. But say I didn't want the percentages, like instead I want the total number of orders by channel. I can move order ID into the marks instead, and right-click to make this use the count distinct. And because this is using the count distinct, I don't need to divide by 2. But if I was using the sum of something like order value, I would need to divide by 2 to get the true value since we union the data. And that duplicated all the rows. To change the color of the rings, I'll go to the first mark and remove the measure name coloring. For the labels, I want these to be a different color than the rings. So within the second mark, I'm going to double click into the channel and I'll do plus, label, and quotes. That way we get two separate legends. Now I just need to fix the x-axis for the label so it's pointed to channel label instead of just the channel. But you can see the labels are a bit off. And that's because the labels are also controlled by the y-axis. So I'm going to edit that table calculation to include the channel label as well. Now I can use the legend to edit the colors. And I'll fast forward through assigning colors for the rings. Then I'll edit the colors for the legend. And this time I want to match the colors to the rings for channel, but make them darker. That way they stand out a bit more. And using label in the marks, I can format the text in these labels, like making them white so they really stand out against their dark container. Now originally when I created the points formula, I used 360, because that's how many degrees are in a circle. So this purple ring is about 50%, and that's why it reaches halfway around the circle. But if I want to make the rings longer while still keeping them proportional, instead of multiplying by 360, I'll increase that number to stretch the rings out. Right now there's no indication of what each line represents. So in the first mark, I'm going to bring channel in as a label. And using label in the marks, I'll make them on the line ends. And I only want the label on the start of the line. Then I can format these so they're bigger and bolder. And for the font, I want them to match the mark color so they're the same color as the rings. For formatting, I'm going to start by hiding the null indicator. Then I'll remove all the headers. And to format this worksheet, I'll remove the shading. Then for the borders, I'll remove the row and column dividers. And for the lines, I'll remove the grid lines and the zero lines. And now I can add the radial chart onto a dashboard. But you'll see as I start to put it in this container, it's a bit crammed. But I can adjust the sizes back on the worksheet. I'll start by using the size slider for the line to make it thinner. Then I'll use the size slider for the shape to make them smaller. But on the dashboard, we can see it's still getting cut off. And that's because the worksheet is smaller inside the dashboard, so part of the visual is getting clipped. To fix this, we just need to edit the axis to be a wider range. So I'll try out -3.7 to 3.7. And I'll do this for both the axes to keep it consistent, so the shape stays circular. This radial chart with modern end labels makes it much easier to read because you can instantly see the value at the end of each segment. It's a simple design choice, but it adds clarity. And the best part is you can customize it to display any metric in any shape you want. This video is really similar to a video I did that I showed at the beginning, where I use shapes at the start of the line instead of text. And while that method is a bit easier because you're adding it to the start, this one requires us to find the end of the line to add the shape. But both approaches save space and add a creative touch to your dashboard.